Alright, welcome back to Witch Hat Atelier Anime Review, episode number 2. We are here discussing the second episode of the series, Witch Atelier, known as the School of the Grassland. And we get some new characters here. We get at least 3 new characters, all female. Get that. So, we start with Coco and Cornery. We're arriving on the Pegasus carriage. They say like a day or two passed by since the previous episode because it's like really quick. Because the events last episodes mentioned rumor. I'm like, that was quick. So they arrive at his atelier. They pronounce it something else in the dub. It's more of a German. It sounds like a bit of a German pronunciation. It's basically this almost a small house with like a few different rooms, and this kind of like a small school where he's got, and of course, basically she's now his apprentice. They go in, and then he takes out this particular object. He just pulls apart like this, and out pops this pot of water. Hands to Coco, and she has no idea how to use this thing at all. And then we're introduced to the first of the three other students, because Coco is the 4th student. And the first we're introduced to is, and I recognized the voice right away as soon as basically I heard the voice. This is Atelier, voiced by Sarah Weinehoff, who gives her a German accent. Yes, for some weird reason, yes, this is Sarah Weinehoff voicing her. This is definitely credit for her. But this is the same accent voice she gave to the Elmwood Witch from the Elmwood Witch arc from Black Butler. I am not kidding about that. This is literally the same exact style voice that she gave for that character. Like, is implied this is set like an alternate version of Germany, whatever. It's not very clear. Shows her how to use a thing, and then we're introduced to another character, a young girl with blue hair. Her name is, let's see if I can find her here. It's not that one. I remember it's blue hair. I remember that. Oh, this is Rachia, and she's voiced by someone I'm not familiar with, Narita Brawin. She is very shy, and after introducing him, of course, then we have, of course, Quadri introduced him, and then he introduced to, well, like mentioned about the whole thing about forbidden spells, and then, of course, introduced to like, he explains the history of magic, where apparently in this world magic used to be more widely known. It's kept a secret because magic caused conflict. So basically it's against the rules to have magic inflict on humans. Even healing spells are deemed forbidden, which I'm thinking that's weird. I have never heard basically of any other anime series where healing spells are deemed to be forbidden. A healing spell. Because in all the fantasy anime I've ever seen, healing spell is the most common one I've seen. Heck, there's a character in one series called The Wrong Use Healing Magic, where the character is known for using healing magic. One of 2 I can think of. The other, of course, we redo for healer, but that's something else altogether. So it explains the history of magic and the whole thing about forbidden spells, but they usually like a right soul spell and to light up these little lanterns on the wall. And then he's introduced to this big window, which is another form of magic, which they can use. Which basically, if they turn it a particular way, it can change locations. But yes, they're in a hilly area, but the window can sort of teleport them. And we have the Tower of Tomes, which she presumes, and this is probably the case, like because he mentions any new grimoire that's basically released, automatically a copy is put in that very tower. And she just, maybe she'll visit the place. Nope, it's basically surrounded by a sea dragon. Gets him wet, and then of course, just takes her to basically what appears to be her room, which is almost like a small apartment inside this place, where it's got like 2 separate rooms, a workspace. I'm like, okay, at least they give her some privacy. And then, of course, leaves on her own. And then we're introduced to another character. By the way, in the character Sarah Weinehoff, this is now the 48th series I have now heard her in. And then we're introduced to another character here. By the way, she's actually the last character introduced here. This is Agat. Yes, her name is Agat. A black hair girl who is voiced by Mallory Morris. Yep. I'm trying to see if I can find the place here. If I can. Here we go. Mallory Morris. This actually is the 16th series to come across her in. The last one was My Dress Up Darling. So, bit different character. Like in the case, the other two characters. It seems like, with the exception of Coco, and they mentioned Atelier, so I am guessing this is probably set in Ultiverse of Italy, presumably, but it's not very clear with that. So, I mentioned a little earlier about Ateliers. And then introduced to Melanie Morris, where, well, Ada basically, every time she shows spells, her fingers turn black. And then, of course, they have a small session with, of course, Quenery, and then, of course, he has to leave for a few days. And, of course, the episode ends with Ada basically, like, at one point, she draws, like, a magic circle on a piece of paper, but it basically turns the direction of Ada. And she points out that looking at the paper, like, oh, you draw the thing a little too long. Like, okay, that's a small little error. Well, she is a senior student, so she have to correct that. If I can tell, it's not a big criticism. She's not calling her an idiot. She just pointed out something, and, of course, Coco accepts it. Basically, yeah, she made a small error, and accepted no problem. Now, the episode for almost, I don't know if I mentioned this, the episode covered the entire, like I mentioned, covered the entire episode. I think I mentioned before this. It covered the entirety of episode chapter 2 and the first 18 pages of chapter 3. And the manga itself is only released like 95 chapters, so we got a little while to go. I'm guessing they're probably gonna go with the series at a very slow pace when it comes to adaptation, because there's not a lot of manga to adapt. And apparently, get this, so from what I've read, apparently this was like a manga published in 2016. That's long ago, basically 10 years ago. I think this is a monthly manga. Yes, I think it's a monthly manga. So, apparently, if I read online, there's an article I read. Well, apparently this has been in the planning process since 2019. Why it took so long? I don't know. It just kind of something else. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the video. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn on notifications. Next up, Commoners X. Okay? Next video. Bye.